Welcome to the COSB 360 Conversations podcast, the platform for county influencers. This is a new platform being launched by County HR's Organizational and Talent Development Division to engage with our leaders and keep our workforce informed. This is also one way that we can share the efforts of departmental staff and what it takes from a leadership perspective to keep the wheels turning in our organization. This podcast is being co-hosted by June Mighty and Dr. Leonie Mattison.
Good morning. And I thank you guys for all, joining us on the COSB 360 podcast, a platform for county influencers. And today, I'm so happy there's my co-host, Dr. Leonie Mattison, and then we have Wendy Sims-Moten, who is the executive director for First 5
Yay! I'm like a kid, yeah.
Yes. You know what I like about, I want to say something about Leonie's background is really cool. She just did this right before we started, and I think this really was cool. So after we get off this program, I'm going to go find a background like that because it's really cool. Make gratitude a habit is really a profound statement, so it's good that she has it there. But Wendy, we are so glad to have you again. So I want everyone to know that we actually recorded a session with Wendy in May. Yeah, moving by so fast. Sometimes I feel like I'm just losing track of time, and you guys are probably feeling the same way. And recorded it like we recorded the session with Mona and with Scott. And for some reason, it did not take, but probably because I was having some internet issues at the time and it just did not stick.
I see.
So here you are again. Thank you for coming back because you had some really great things to talk about. You talked about we were still talking about navigating crisis and asking you some questions in terms of how you do that. What do you do to prepare yourself as a leader to navigate crisis? And you were giving us a host of things and even some things around essentialism and values and priorities. And it was so rich. So I'm hoping that we can capture some of that again as we go through this. But Wendy, even since that time, right, since you were here the last time, things have changed in our whole dynamics. We've opened up, not just we as Santa Barbara County, but a lot of states have opened up in terms of COVID-19. And some states are closing down again, pulling back, pulling the reins. Yeah. I was watching our governor. There was one, I think it's Imperial County, that had about 23% cases that were positive, and so he was asking them to, reinstate the order. There's all these different things in terms of the discussions regarding race and everything that's in the midst of COVID. All of this is happening, the different protests. So what happens, and the reason why I'm sharing all this is because guess what? We're still having to navigate crisis, right? This topic is still relevant. And so even though we did the first session in May, I think we still have some things to do here. So what I want to do is ask you some questions surrounding this, Wendy, and in terms of what do you do, first of all, as a leader, because we lead really from who we are, and Leonie's going to talk a little bit about more about that. But what do you do in order to prepare yourself to navigate?
Thank you. Thank you for, again, being here. Doing it again. It's okay. We have step 2, we have to take. So, it's good to be here with the Dr. Mattison and the mighty June. I'll let June mighty. And, thank you for that. And you're absolutely right. There's so much that has happened so fast and so quickly within, a month. Even, now moving into a new month and we're about to celebrate some Independence Days. And so a lot of things have gone on. And so I think for me as being a leader is always just being prepared and nurturing every day, right? What is it every day that I need to be taking care of, right? And so I was thinking about that on the way this morning to say, in those small moments, if people know that you care for them in the small moments, then they can trust you in the large moments, right? So it's always about nurturing folks and putting them in front. And that's really how I prepare myself as a leader and taking time, which is difficult sometimes as leaders, taking that small moment to just reinforce yourself. Reinforce yourself in your mission and what your purpose is, and understanding why you are the leader at the time that things are going on, and even in the quiet moments, who are you as a leader? So maintaining those things. And I know that's something that we do here at First Five, is that it's really important, and we have a document that we have done and that everybody was integral in contributing to the way we work. Because the way we work in, as I said, the way we work in those small moments, they will carry over to the large moments, right? So you're practicing.
Well, Wendy, hold on one second there. Well, before you go any further into that, let's go back probably about 2 sentences when you talk about the small moments, but the private moments, right?
Yeah.
Because really even before your team and before the document, there's you.
Right.
So let's talk about you a little bit first.
Mm-hmm.
You have, you have huge bandwidth, lady,
Yeah.
So with all that you do and your involvement in the community, let's pull it back and talk about what do you do to prepare yourself?
What I do is really, I do have a moment of meditation and prayer to keep me grounded. To keep me grounded in myself, because it's in those quiet moments is when you can hear yourself and hear things around you. So even in the midst of all the chaos and the different things that I am in, I will retreat in a moment of silence to ground and focus myself. And that takes for me, remembering the relationships and nurturing them, even though they're not physically here, the relationships that I have with my grandmother, my mother, my family and friends, that keeps me going, right? It really, really does. And a great sense of humor, and knowing what my grandma would always say, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And you just got to figure out in those moments who you are, remember who you are, and remember why. So those are critical to me. And and never lose my sense of humanity. Never lose that. Humanity, humility, grace, understanding and patience and all of those things. And girl, I will call on the Lord in the minute, whatever I need. I'm just saying, people need to call on those higher powers to get them through, even when they're struggling alone, right? Because oftentimes we share with folks what we want them to hear, but not those really beautiful, deep things. And sometimes if you have a foundation, which I must have, that I couldn't be sitting here today in the midst of all the things that I'm a part of, and feel responsible to be a part of. I could not have that without that grounding of me and knowing that I have a higher power that is guiding me, strengthening me, and taking the time, even 5 minutes. There was a thing on TV that said, calm for 30 seconds, do nothing for 30 seconds. So, and being what's around me and seeing what's happening in different places, how I can make myself better. So I really is about, for me, is being, not losing my humility and who I am as a person, and recognizing that there are other people in this world, they're humans, and they're not always, I agree with them or like them, but in the midst, and don't lose who I am in the midst of everything else. And that keeps me grounded in how I lead, even in the situations. That helps me stay grounded.
Awesome.
I'd like to interject here for a minute. Yeah. I feel like I'm being fueled up right now with what you're saying. So thank you for sharing. And June and I had a really deep conversation about a month or two ago about valuing people.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying is, but first we have to value ourselves.
Yes.
Director like to say, you can't give what you don't have.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Because we give out of ourselves. And I think sometimes we tend to feel like there's a disconnection between who we are and how we show up and what we give, right?
Right.
But it takes the whole of me to show up as a productive employee or leader. Yeah. And what you're saying is we've got to, in this moment, I think we've been given this pause. And remember, a couple months ago, the county actually had a pause in the strategic plan. Yeah. And it's so funny that the world now, we're going through this pause. And it is in some of us uncomfortable. But what I'm hearing you say to us is take the time to reground yourself.
Right.
Reground yourself, examine who you are, right? Yeah. And those areas where we need to refuel, pour into what we need to pour into ourselves so that we can show up as our best selves in the workplace or even for our families. So, thank you for that reminder. Thank you for that reminder.
And I just to add to that, when, keeping sense of oneself, even through the midst of this, is, we talk about navigating the crisis. I think, again, who I am and sharing who I am and with our team. And you'll hear me go back and forth with a team, because it's really crucially important that they see me, that I model, and that they know that I see them, right? So particularly when you're leading, people have to be willing to follow you. And that doesn't come in that moment. It comes because there's been moments before that they're willing to follow you and get through you in terms of a leader. And that you as a leader, you're willing to see too, that there are things you might need to follow and understand that your role changes as a leader, as a leader. And that keeps your perspective open, because it's not just about your perspective, it's including others' perspective. So as we've been kind of going through this as of March 13th, and we would meet every week, with our team just to check in. And we would eventually get to what we need to do. But how are you doing? I think that's so critical in a crisis, or even before. You ask that question, how are you doing? Because then that says, I personally want to know how you are doing, not what you're doing, but how you are doing. And sometimes, even if there's not an answer that comes back, that really often resonates with folks, because she really cares. He or she really cares, because they ask how I was doing, So that made it very, very personal. And so to go that step further, to further sustain us through this, I asked our team, I said, so as you're going through different things and we have to do things a little bit differently, I want you to take a journal. And I want you to write down those moments, because we're going to circle back and talk about how you were feeling. Are there things we could have done better in that moment? Because oftentimes, if we just said today, time has gone really fast. Yeah. And so you don't always capture those moments, and we don't always record them, right? But we got this, in terms of that, write it down, because you might have to refer to that moment even, months and years from now. But how was I feeling? How did I get through that? And I think that was another way of me expressing to the team, how are you doing? I want to know how you're doing. And more importantly, you need to know how you're doing, right? Because when you're writing those things, there's things that you can hear. So I think all of those sorts of things in your values and your work, that's how you continue to navigate in a crisis, because you're not in a crisis. You're in a moment. And it has to be elevated. You know what I'm saying? And what are you going to do in that moment? Like, okay, so let me think, because you have to have something to pull up on to even get through that moment. Like, okay, all right, this is facing me, but here's our basic foundation things that we'll need to have to navigate through. And I think that keeps you grounded. It keeps you understanding what you need to do and your role and how it may change, and you're okay with that, and still reassuring folks and nurturing outside the moment. Every day, I'm nurtured. Hello, how are you doing? Can I help you today? What can we do today? And give that space. Always, I think as a leader, for me, that helps me let me know that I'm continuing to improve myself, is taking the time with our team and say, how are you doing? And I do it on an individual basis as well. It could be that simple. And sometimes, I know Leonie, you and I were talking about, sometimes people don't want an answer. They just want you to hear them.
Absolutely.
They just want you to hear them.
Absolutely. And June, I'll let you, but it would be remiss of me not to share this. Recently, I started feeling empty. Mm-hmm. And I questioned, what am I feeling? What's going on with me? I'm not sad. I'm not too happy, but I just feel I have nothing more to give. Mm-hmm. And with June during our one-on-one, because I have a similar practice, I want to know that my people are okay. It's so important to me, because you cannot give if you're not okay. Mm-hmm. And I remember I shared with June, I said, I learned it's called compassion fatigue. Mm-hmm. I was empty. Yeah. I'm a single mom. I'm a leader. I have other responsibilities. And so I just felt, ugh. And then my daughter, because you're in childcare, and we were talking about this. And so my little one crashed as well with all that's going on. And mom had to put a pause break. The leader, Leonie, had to put a pause break and say, I got to take care of home. Mm-hmm. Because I'm no good to my team if things are not going well at home and for me personally. Yeah. And so I had to take that time out to be with my daughter and to be present, hear her concerns. And so, you know, I want June to segue into really the work that you're doing, because it is so critical. And I have so much respect for our teachers and folks in the early childhood field, because a lot of what we've had to take on during this crisis that we weren't trained necessarily for, you know, the balance being a homeschooling our kids and being a leader and all the other stuff that we're forced to do during COVID-19 really has changed our mindset. More about that towards the end of the show. So June, go ahead and ask your questions.
Well, no, so I was just going to follow up on that, and thanks for sharing that, because Wendy, when Leonie segues into in terms of her daughter, her children, this is your bailiwick, so to speak, you know, dealing with children. And so talk to me, because just give us some insight in terms of how the children are being impacted. You know, what are some of the feedbacks, things that you can share with us in terms of the challenges from the parents and the children and the dynamics that you're dealing with.
Exactly. So thank you. And thank you, Dr. Leonie, for sharing that. It is so crucial. This is definitely impacting our children from being in utero with mother carrying baby. So this whole thing, so it's been impacted even to that level, as we talk about brain development that's happening in utero and all those connections and how critical it is that's happening, that they're being potentially impacted through pregnancy all the way out to where they are. Kids are very much in tune of what the adults do, right? They make no mistake. I know they're resilient and sometimes forget, we think, but they're in that moment. It's there in that brain. It has been indelible in that brain. Something happened there, and thank goodness in some instances they're resilient and they're still able to carry on. But make no mistake about it, there is an impact. And it doesn't matter how young they are, there's an impact, whether they feel comforted by their mother, you know, in this, if she's stressed out, fathers are stressed out, families are stressed out, you know, they're definitely being impacted by that. And so we really have to take that moment, such as you did. I need to be mom at this point, you know, in the middle of what is my child needing in that. And I think another part of that is letting our children, you know, as much as they come for us for comfort and confidence and everything they need, you know, until they're able to kind of navigate some of those things on their own, they're coming to us first. And so we're really having to see to their needs, you know, at that moment, and realizing in this time in space that they are being impacted. And so how do we talk to them? And that goes back to how do we talk about anything having to explain to a child if we've not been through it ourselves, right? Or if we're trying to navigate it, you know, through ourselves. And it's okay to be vulnerable. You know, oftentimes we think we need to be strong and things, but kids need to be able to see. They need to have the range of controlled emotions. You know, there's anger, there's frustration, all of those things. It's when those things get out of control, right? In terms of that. And so that, for me and for our first time in early learning and early care, it's like, how do we make sure that the family foundation is strong? And what do you have? What do you need? In a way that they feel like you see them and you're not telling them what to do, right? And so family is really important in the early learning, because that's where that cocoon, if you will, so these little butterflies come out. That in that cocoon you're battling, and how to do that. And how do you do that in a constructive way, in a positive way? So when you fly, when that cocoon opens, the butterfly is free to fly. But there's been some work in that cocoon, And that starts with in utero, that starts with early care, that starts with all of those things of talking to our children and meeting our children where they are. They're not always to express their feelings in words. They haven't got them yet, right? They don't have that vocabulary yet, but they have the emotion. They may cry, they may reach out, they may be quiet, may do anything, but pay attention to that piece, because at that moment, you're in that moment. And so as we talk about early care and educate, that's crucial, because as you prepare those small moments as they get younger, as they get older, then we're less to have intervention things in the later grades, because we've taken care of those things in the early years. We've built a foundation and a framework of how to be, because we've paid attention.
So let me jump in here. So really, it's also partially even about you know, a lot of times we do life skills training. I know when my daughter was going through school, she had life skills.
Right.
But it wasn't life skills during first five, you know, I don't know, you know, and so, you know, we wait sometimes until they get to like high school and we're talking about life skills. Don't we need life skills prior to that? I mean,
Right. Oh, yes.
Interacting and
yeah, there's no magazine, there's no, you know, there's no guide to how to take care of children, because you could have 5 and the 6th was like, I have never experienced what this child is. Do all the things, right? But it's not, and it's taking your experience, it is taking your education, because you need both of them, right, to be better able to navigate parenthood and know that parents are a child's first teacher. Know that. And so how do we support our parents? It's like, what do we need to do? It's like, you know, if you go through it, you know, you have childbirth, you have Lamaze, they can give you an idea. So you have a clue to what's going, and it may be totally different from what they said, but at least you can have something to recall. So I think that's what you hear me saying about parenting. Let's talk about parenting, not just Lamaze. Let's prepare you to be a parent, for you to open up in a space where you can open up and share your doubts. I'm scared to death about this little person that's coming out. I don't know if I'm going to love it. I don't know if I'm going to do all those things. And so that's, again, preparing you as a parent. And that's crucially important for family strengthening. It's one of our huge initiatives in First Five here in Santa Barbara and across the state, strengthening that family, because that's that nurturing piece. And what do you need? Meeting families where they are, knowing that there's all types of different care that our kids have to go through. Some have to be a family, friend, and neighbor. So how do we encourage that community of family, friends, and neighbors to give them what they need, the tools they need, the space to talk about? Because as you're taking, you may not be a licensed care, but that's where the care is. Oftentimes kids are not necessarily always in licensed care, but they may, for whatever reasons, philosophical, economical, they're at a family, friend, and neighbor. And so how do we support them, and giving those caregivers space to say, I don't really know, can you tell me, this is how I need to know it? And also, I think it's really important culturally understanding how people need to receive the information. You know, you can put it out there, but if it doesn't feel like they can receive it, or you can receive things, then it just goes, it just lays null and void, right?
You know what?
Strengthening piece.
So let me, again, I'm jumping because you're saying certain things, because of course my mind is, you know, going, when you talk about being culturally sensitive. So one of the gentlemen that I listened to, and his talk impacted me in such a way. I don't know if you've ever heard a speaker, and something that they say, or the way that they say it, literally, there's a shift right away. And this is kind of what happened to me when I first heard Brian Stevenson. There was a shift. Mm-hmm. He's with the Equal Justice Initiative out of Alabama. And he was telling some stories. He was talking about leadership. He was talking about narratives that we create. But that there are nuances in each narrative, and that you have to get proximate to the situation in order to effectively lead and make decisions. So what I'm hearing you say, even when you talk about culture, it's about getting using his words, proximate. You know, he used an analogy in terms of, you can't stand from a distance and you're just looking at the outside. It's, you know what, it's almost like the best analogy. You know, you drive down the block, you know, you're looking at everybody's houses, you know, oh, that's so pretty. Oh, that looks this, but you don't know what's going on inside because you're not proximate.
Right.
So, you know, I think that's what I hear you say. Even when we talk about culture, we have to look at ways, especially leaders, to get proximate to a situation, to understand the nuances. I like to say, nothing is ever truly, I shouldn't say nothing, some things are, but most things have shades of gray. Black and white are extremes. There's shades of gray. There's nuances in each and every one of our lives, each and every one of our experiences, each and every one of our neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And if you don't kind of get up close, like with a little microscope, so to speak, as a leader, and try to look at some of the granularities, you're gonna miss it, you know. And so that's what I hear when you talk about culture. I hear him in my head, you know, I talk about, you got to get proximate to the situation. There's too many.
Yeah, and I think that has to be the part of your values too. I care enough to get in, to get close and understand, right? So that when in this moment of social distancing, you're not losing that. And I cannot stress enough about relationships. They have to go on. You cannot try to establish a relationship in the midst of a crisis. They have to be nurtured. They have to be established. You have to establish those trusts. And that even starts early. That starts early. So, early is in many things. Preventive, in terms of that, how do we do things early, even in our county culture? I think be it resolved, we have been tested. Our Renew 22 initiative has been tested. Did we really take it to heart in the time that we were developing and nurturing it? Because this is when we really need to rebalance. And if you're really taking it to heart, every department that is here to serve the community, have we taken that to heart? We should have. We should be looking at that mission. Is it still relative, or do I need to look at something? Because I got to tell you, I was all 100% of the Renew 22, because that's something at First Five we've had to do, just by nature of our funding, and we had to be sure and clear that we were able to adapt. And so when Renew 22 came along, I was like, oh yeah, these are good words that I can use, but they're words, but they're only words unless you put action behind them. And so I would wonder, as a county, how are we doing that?
Wendy, this week we in HR OTD division, we as in response actually to the COVID-19 crisis, we started a newsletter called the Monday Morning Connect that we sent to a select group of HR individuals across the county, represented in each department. And this week, it was my week to write. And I talk about the omnipresence of change, and how, yes, Renew 22 really has forced us to redesign the way we do our work. So redesign for us here in HR OTD is pivoting from the in-classroom training to an online, similar to what we're doing now. We're having this conversation, which we were like, oh no, we can't do this online. And now we're doing it, as Scott says, like, I don't have a choice. We have to do it, right? And so we are in the middle. I am excited. My team and I, we are all in. I mean, we Renew 22 into everything. About braiding. Maria Elena like the analogy of braiding. I like the analogy of food. I put the seasoning, the spices of rebalance in, and I dash a little redesign here.
Yeah.
And so we're all in, Mona. Please know we are all in. This week, when we talk about the omnipresence of change, what's on top of mind for our leaders is what I've heard from some of our leaders and employees alike. Workforce, the existing workforce have the skill set to not only navigate through the crises, but what will that look like post COVID-19, right? And so we're looking at that, we're looking at the workforce skill set of 2030 and 2060. We're ahead of that, and we're looking at actually the design of the workspaces, in 2060, what will that look like? And one of the things, and I'm not going to give it away because I want you guys to go read the article, it talks about behavioral skill set. And in the past, when we would push emotional intelligence, we had some pushback from some of our leaders and employees. It's just too much. You guys are just pushing this thing. Guess what? We definitely need to display our emotional intelligence. Actually, it is a model. It's actually part of our, really needs to be part of our toolkit that we can pull from: the empathy, the awareness, right? Understanding of oneself and others. And so it is so critical, as you're saying, and you and I had this conversation yesterday, our kids are looking through the mirrors of our behaviors.
Yes, they are.
And our actions. What are they seeing? What are we showcasing to our children that they're the generation, like the future leaders? What path are we creating for them to navigate? Right?
And it's crucial about that mirror. You were saying. I said I do the African American Women's Luncheon annually. Obviously, we had to postpone this year. It was really about bringing African American women together to see each other. So oftentimes you feel invisible, and that's another piece in terms of our employees. Are they feeling invisible? How do we gather them in this moment, right? And how do we look at that? Because you feel invisible. So bringing it together just coming together and just being together. There's no agenda. And so one of the things that particular year I had was small compacts that every attendee got. And it was about, looking at not only mirroring for our kids, but it also, when you look in that mirror yourself, what do you see? And I think as leaders, we have to look within ourselves, at what am I seeing? Am I the best prepared to do what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis? Because we have large crises, right? But there are small crises. We have human beings going on. We have state budgets going crazy. So there are many other crises. But I think that with the pandemic, it really elevates every crisis and how you deal with them on a higher level. Because this wasn't the first crisis, it's how you dealt with it and what are we learned from it. Each time we have to learn how to do things better from day to day, because things are changing day to day. How are we learning? One of the things we do with First Five, again, is about relationships. You hear me say it, and appreciate and acknowledge the relationships that are, as people are assisting you through things. So one of the things is that in our auditor controller's office, we have a great relationship with them, yet we need to have a segregation of relationship with them. But when someone comes to help you and they see you, you need to acknowledge and say that out loud, that how we're working together and you formed a relationship so that you are much stronger as a department and then much stronger as a county. Because I'm probably known for giving people lifesavers. I'm like, Lord, girl, you just saved my life in that moment. So I just want to acknowledge that in that moment that I seen you and I appreciate and I acknowledge you. And we don't do that enough, I think, in our county. But as we're looking at Renewed 22, that's part of it too. Relationships, we might want to add an R on that, whatever. Add another that about relationships in terms of that and keeping a sense of humor in it and letting people know, again, even in this crazy moment, there's a moment of light, right? And so I was having, when we talk about, and this is also about crisis too, like people are willing to go down the road with you if they have some familiarity with you, some type of relationship with you, and you can keep focused on things and not lose the humanity of that. I can't stress that enough about the humanity of things. And as you're saying, Leonie, in terms of let's look at this, how let's redesign, let's rethink how we can do it better. And other practices, in those moments when we're talking between departments, what things are you doing really well over there that could help us here, and what things are we doing here that can help you? And so I had the example of the audit controller that we were having because we have to balance between the state controller and our local county auditors. We got to figure, how do we stay in the middle and satisfy both compliances, right? And so we institute a pre and post before they come in. Here's what's happening in First Five World that you need to know as you prepare our statements, right? And so that you can prepare them with the most relevant information. And then afterwards, let's talk about what we could do better, what could do better. So each year has gotten stronger, and we both have really bought into making sure that a goal is to make sure we have a clean audit, that we understand better what we can do to produce that along the way. So as we begin to put into our employees what they can do and how their contribution is make the end product so much stronger, that again, that's a conversation, right? And that's trusting each other to do what they do. And lastly, I'll say on this point where I was struggling with some relationships and so this person, he was just a little, frumpy. I don't know. I'm just gonna put it that way. And I would pick it, and his extension was X, 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 and X. If you need this help, and I said, well, okay, I'm gonna call this. And I called it. He would always get this I said, well, let me just check up. I'm sensing a little attitude here, but it says on this paper, if I need this help, call this extension. Is that right? Just calling them up instead of calling them out. Calling you up. I just want to call you up. I don't want to call you out that you acted up right.
I like that. To call you up instead of calling you out. I think that's what I was saying. And I thought, because I'm going to start with me. It could be operator error that I dialed the wrong extension for help, but I know what this paper said. So if that's no longer your extension, tell me who else to call up. Because, and from there on, even though it wasn't some close relationship across the hall, I'm like, hey, there was a certain level of respect because I didn't make him feel like he was, anyway, that you're just, I don't want to deal with you, that you just acting ugly, even though you are. But there's a way to call people up. And we were talking about that, Doctor. We were calling about that. Call them up. And I just want to call up and understand, even if this,
that comes from my mother. That's great.
See, you said that because here's the thing. It's really good, and we're laughing at it. It's funny, but at the same time, it's a skill.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people don't have that skill. So we have to think about how do we impart that type of skill to individuals in terms of, calling them up instead of calling them out. I mean, that's relates to some tact and diplomacy. And it's something that has to be cultivated.
And things that my parents would say, oh, I'm never going to say that. What are you talking about? So there's a lot to call up on, if you will, call up on to in that moment. And my mother was always aware about, like, she could tell you how to go. I think I like what she just told me, even though it was like, what? But just appreciating that and understanding when you say you're calling someone up about tact and diplomacy, it's about everything is not about you, right? And like, I'm calling to get information, but I don't know the story of the person on the other end that day in that moment. So I don't have to receive what's going on, and everything's not about me. And that was my dad taught me that about 12. And he would say something, I go, well, what about me? He goes, everything is about you. And I said, it's not, So, but I mean, and I learned that later on, that it's not, because you don't really know necessarily what someone else may be going through. And it's not necessarily directed at you. So taking that into consideration when you're talking to someone too. And then that's really calling up respectfully, if you will. And then it allows people to self-correct, even though you didn't devastate them by like, you whatever, as my mom would say, her XYZs. And I'll explain the XYZ comment. She would say, and I didn't have to do my XYZs. I'm like, Mom, so what's up with the XYZ? She said, that means if I get to the XYZs, and there's not many nice words in the XYZ. She said, that means I've gone from A to all the way to that, and I can't say a nice thing about you. Say, oh, now I'm at the XYZ. So that means I've taken the time to figure out how I can be nice and gracious, and I can't for whatever reason. I'm gonna have to figure out a different strategy to work with you, right? So it's just saying that not everything's about you, and that people do have things that they're going through as well. And in that moment, even you're calling them up, and it gives them an opportunity to say, maybe that wasn't my best behavior. And the last thing I'll say on that is that I often use candy stories, songs, to get my point across in my, to seize moments. And I was having difficulty. I'm like, oh man, I'm receiving this negative stuff, and I know that's not me. So I'm gonna have to figure out a way to navigate this, right? So it's only what you receive too. And so I thought, this is a really crazy little moment we're having here. And it happened to budget, and everybody does budget, part of budget, and it's crazy, depending on what's going on. So I sent this person who was driving me crazy, So I sent her a joy of almond joys and mounds. Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. So I'm just saying, so there are ways to do that and call people up. I want to call you up about this, just so how you're making me feel without it being contentious. That doesn't mean that you don't have to get there when you need to get there. Because sometimes people may, mistake that as, no, not at all. I'm going to start out good. And if we need to go there, we will go there, and we will go there together. In terms of that, it doesn't need to be a public spectacle. We'll go there together so that we're understanding and seeing each other. And oftentimes, I think that's really important too, how you relate to someone that is difficult, and figure out what's irritating you about me. I mean, what's me irritating you and opposite. So, yeah.
But I'm going to switch over to Leonie, but before I do that, before I transition, you've said a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm laughing again, but here's the thing. These are some of the type of skills that's necessary to maintain. Relationships are important. Yeah. But healthy relationships.
Absolutely.
And healthy relationships, not only within our own division, not only within our own department, but across the county.
Right.
So, and that's the type of thing in terms of really knowing how to, when there are issues, there are ways to address issues and concerns, even as we're navigating crisis.
Right.
To maintain that homeostasis, I'd like to call it, that balance, even as you're going through the ability to pivot. You're pivoting because you have balance on another foot. So you have to have some type of balance somehow to be able to pivot effectively. So this is all about relationships and navigating those tough things. And these simple things, they're simple, but profound, and we need to apply them more. Leonie?
Yeah. Wow. A lot has been said, a lot of great information and shared stories, Wendy. And I shared with you yesterday that statement of why not call each other up instead of calling each other out. I've been tweeting it. I put it on my LinkedIn page, my Facebook page, because it meant a lot to me when I heard that. I actually used it in a different context, just so you know. Use it from the perspective, as you are aware, and all of our listeners, we're going through not only the health crisis and an economic crisis, but we're going through a civil rights crisis right now. And it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge that we're 3 African-American women, or like I like to say, Black women, and we're leaders here in the county. And so when I used your quote, I use it from the perspective of I need to call up others to see how they're doing, instead of getting on email or social media and calling people out for what we think they're not doing. Right. Because we're all processing everything that's going on. So I want to hear from your perspective as an African-American leader. How has it been for you navigating this civil rights injustice piece? What can you share with our listeners to help us to be able to navigate gracefully? And the other piece of my question having to do with how do we have, and you and I talked about this yesterday, where do we start, or how do we initiate what we call conversations for a change? Those are my 2 questions. I want to know from your perspective. I want to hear from your perspective on these two things.
Yes, well, thank you for bringing that question. And I said a little bit about being invisible, and I'll share this, and I've shared it with you. I had the great privilege and honor to sit on one of the hiring board, on hiring panels, and I was like, "Girl, I'm going to tell you." So it's very few leaders, Black leaders here in the county department itself, and so you don't often see that. So sometimes it's isolating. You feel a little lonely. And so I'll just say, when I saw you 2 coming, I said, "Oh no, 2 on the same day, hallelujah." Yes, So I'm just saying, I didn't know what skills you're going to bring. I was going to look at that, But let me just tell you, just to come, something is about that. I said, there's just something about when you see someone, right? When you see someone, and there's that instant, like, whoo, thank you. It didn't preclude me from knowing that what I was about to do. You still had to be qualified for what we were asking, but just that. And when you don't see enough of that in various places that are authentic, not just for the window dressing, but authentically there, the voices are there, the skill and talent, they're there, and you can see it, it's being there, that's great. And that's good to have, because at this moment, being an African-American leader, being an Afro-American period, is exhausting. Because we've not had the level of real conversation. And I hope that it's real conversation and not just for the moment. That because what's going on, it's in the forefront of your thoughts. That I want it to be ingrained in your thoughts, wherever you are. Start where you are. So if you're asking yourself, if you don't have a diverse, if you don't have diversity, if you will, in your practice, your protocols, then don't wait to the moment of crisis that community is being left out. It has to be incorporated from the very beginning. Look around and authentically look around. Don't ask ask those questions in the crisis, is asking what more can we do? Not what do we do? Because you can't wait till it gets to a crisis level. What can we do? Because then you're starting over a lot of things. So to answer your question, it's been really exhausting. But at the same time, it's been exhausting, it's been lonely, it's been scary, because how do I tell you how I really feel about this? Because you're caring for me now, but do you care for me before? And telling me things about, I have a bunch of Black friends. Do you understand what that means? So, but but at the same time, exhausting how this is and all the things that I just said, I do feel for some reason, this time and place is a deep stirring of the soul, because you literally seen the life being taken out of this man, out of this human, right? And so what it brought back to African Americans to have, we live that every day, fear that could happen every day. So it's exhausting. So if you really want to know, ask me if you really, really want to know. And I don't want you to just ask me now. I want you to ask me 6 months down the road how I'm doing. What am I still doing? Have you changed what you're doing? Even if it's asking yourself the question, because we understand something of this magnitude obviously takes a lot of time. It takes a long time. It took us 50 years to get civil rights. So I'm just saying, it takes you a long time to get things to do. So as a leader, I feel very, in this position, I feel very honored to be in this position. I also feel responsibility. You know,
Yeah.
you can't go one side, you know.
And thank you for that. I'm getting a little bit choked up over here. My faith has always carried me through my tough times.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Wendy, I agree with you. It is exhausting. As I said earlier, I had to take some time off from work because I'm a single African American living in Santa Barbara County, raising Black kids.
Yeah.
And my 13-year-old came to me and told me, Mom, I don't want to live. Nobody wants me to live except for my family.
Yeah.
And my daughter threatened suicide. And I had to, as I said, stop everything. And I had to have those conversations with my Black kids and reaffirm and reconfirm, or every other word you can use around the re's, right? To remind them of who they are and the value they bring to the world. And going back to the quote about Colin, and we have a diversity and inclusion EO manager here. And I remember he called me up and he said, Leonie, how are you doing? And that I said, I feel lonely. I said, I'm giving. But nobody called me up to see how I'm doing, but I'm giving.
Yeah.
I said, I'm hurting.
Yeah.
My kids saw that on TV and now they question everything.
Yeah.
And so I don't want us to ignore what's really going on. Traumatic.
Yeah.
I know we will pull through this together, but I'm asking all of us who are listening, let's call each other up and see how each other are doing. And let's just not say they'll get over it, because if you treat people that way, they're going to remember.
Yeah.
And I had to pause and say to my daughter, baby, you matter. And you're enough. And what's going on, it's not because the world hates everyone. But now we have to shift our mindsets. And to your point is me having to change how I raise my children to be more present, as you said in your earlier show and where you were going today, and to learn how to reconnect on a different level. Yeah. What June doesn't know, and I haven't shared it with the team yet, in the midst of all this, I'm about to be a grandmother as well, and that has been another burden on my shoulder. You know, I can't be with my daughter who's having a really rough pregnancy, and so as a leader, I carry that with me, and I carry so it has been a lot.
Yes.
Okay. And so I wanna milk your quote about not only calling each other up to a higher level of leadership, but I want us to take some time to truly call each other up. Listen, not to be defensive or to be heard. But if you call me, listen, I'm saying.
So thank you, Leonie, and I thank you for being, sharing that very personal, and I hope your daughter continues to recover and know that as a community, we got her whatever you need in terms of, what she needs, and that's important. That goes to how she's feeling in this moment. Can she see herself in the care that she might need? That's an important part about making sure that we have a diverse healthcare so that people feel themselves, they feel comfortable in that moment of care, right? And you feel comfortable that in this community, there's somewhere for my daughter to go, and she's going to feel comfortable and get the help that she needs. I'm going to get the support that I need. And I don't know if your daughter's here locally, but whatever community she's in, let's talk about maybe even while you can't be there, there's some folks that can go and support and help her through that, however that needs to happen. Know that that's there, and I'm offering that. If there are first fives and communities all over, and particularly, Black infant health is crucially important because of all the things that are there. And so we can talk offline a little further with regard to that. So don't hesitate to call me. I'll call you, and wherever she is, where you can't be at that point, someone will be there. And I think that's the other part about community, particularly in this African American community, which is a small percentage, that we have to be there for each other in the time of need, in the time of goodness and gladness and all of those things. And so that we know that someone has us. And this community, there was a quote that was in with the soldiers, the red tails, and it was saying, how does my community feel about me, or how does America feel about me, and how do I feel about America when I am contributing the way that Americans do everything here? But there's a certain way you feel about me in certain times. And so that's a huge question, even in the midst of these times, being African American. How do you feel about me in any given moment? And you will hear me say often, private thoughts give me pause, because I don't know how you're thinking in your private thoughts, but I want to know in your private thoughts that you care just as much as when you are talking and asking what to do. Privately, you're thinking, how can I help be better? What difference can I make today? And yes, let me call up and truly want to know, how are you doing? Because that says I'm into, and if you call, be ready. Don't call thinking you've only got 5 minutes. Call and be ready that they might, as you said, need you just to listen and not always want to solve things. And as I just step to that next moment, I know we're running. We could do a 2-hour show, but anyway, I'm just saying, or continuation. But just saying, as we're going through a strategic plan in the first 5, and it couldn't be a more time. I think the universe has really been speaking to our time to really do, what do we do now 20 years later with so much happening, that the influence and the information that we have right now, we could have possibly written or thought that as we start to do the strategic plan. So we're writing in a place of, what is it essential that we need to do? Do not lose sight of what's essential, because when you focus on the essential parts of things, it keeps you focused, right? It reminds you when you get outside, what are the essential things? We want to make sure, particularly now, that our kids are strong socially and emotional. They're being impacted. So how do we make sure in our strategic plan, not for this moment, but from now on, we talk about little things like racism in early childhood. It lasts a lifetime. So we've got to get on board and start to change that piece and address that has been here. But we have to be brave and courageous to do it, because otherwise we're going to just keep circling around. We have the wherewithal to do whatever we need to do to change. We saw through COVID-19, when we had to shut down this whole county, the whole world was kind of shut down. We did what we needed to do to survive, and we'll still have to continue to work toward that. That's that mind shift. And don't lose those. And when you see that something is disproportionately happening to one part of your community, that's what you got to call up. Yes, you can't say that. And when we talk about all lives matter, they do. But when one part of those lives are disproportionately being impacted, we've got to put our resources, because the rest of y'all are good. But this segment, we've got to put all of our efforts to make sure they're good. So that when we say all, that means everybody, right? Everyone. There are different things that, how do we then think outward and say, how do we in the long haul, in this moment, because and we need to re-energize, because it's not just a moment. This is a movement for a lifetime. As I was talking to my friend, this is an everyday thing. And she was saying, this is not a moment. It is a movement for change. And how do we look at ourselves and not be defensive, but realize, okay, how can I change? What do I need to adapt to? And essentialism helps you do that. What are the essential basic needs? We know the hierarchy of need. We know what it is. And when we need to switch it around in the moment of crisis, everybody gets it. Everybody gets it. And so again, as devastating and as tiring and as exhausting and fearful, I got to tell you, I'll say this, it's exhausting being fearful.
Yes.
My son is 25, and he was supposed to go back to LA. I was already fearful, but he's a young man and he needs to be able to live his life. And we've given him everything he can to be the best that he can be, and that he can call upon that in any moment, right? But it shouldn't be an encounter with a police officer when you have instant fear. You do. And even if it's just, hey, in this case, he said, hey, your headlight is out. But that extra look at my son, I just happened to be there. And for a parent, there was instant fear. So people got to know all lives must matter, and all lives must, have to not be in fear with an encounter of this or that. We encounter fear when we do with the health department, with not putting any blame. But when we are disproportionately dying, that's a fear. Are you really looking at my needs? And if you tell me that 3 things that are proposed, that are a propensity for our community, why are we doing it in the back end, in the front end? How are we working on diabetes, high blood pressure, and how are we dealing with it? So when we get in this crisis, and those things are high risk factors, we're much healthier in that process. And know that we're experiencing, we get it. And we're saying, I hear you, I see you. I am an African-American woman who worked in a field. I get it to know what it is to be a field worker. So don't look at me as if you know my story.
Yes, you asked.
Talk to me. Talk to me and understand my experience.
That's about being that goes back to being proximate.
Yeah, and I just get excited, and I'm so grateful for this time, and I'm so glad that we have these county podcasts, because I know that we will be much more informed, educated, much more show much more empathy, and we need it, because the county should be that leader. We should be leaders. We lead. When you're in this community, you know that your county got you. You don't have to.
We're the mothership. I always I describe the county. We're the mothership, and so the little boats are coming around us, beside us, right? And so we've got to get it right, which is why I am always in a life lead. And through the initial phases of Renew 22 was to transform well, right? Yeah. How we transform. And so now we're in the rough, the seas are, it is a huge storm that's taking place right now. And then there's earthquake. It feels like there's an earthquake, right? That's happening. But to your point, what excites me, yes, I'm very vulnerable about what I'm going through, and I'm cognizant of it, but I'm excited that we get to explore new ways of doing things, right? Yeah. We get to say, look at what's not working. So go to the model of start, stop, continue, right?
Yeah.
And I actually change it up a little bit. I go start, release, and accelerate.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What are some things we need to start? What are some things we need to just bless and release? And what are those nuances that we need to say, you know what, it's working. There's some things that's working well, but we're going to accelerate them. Quickly, I'll tell you here, the county, we're working on like a learning management system. We're going to get a learning management system. Yes. I'm excited about that because it brings together all of the training and talent development under one umbrella, right? And it's a way of forging new connection. And June and we were talking about this, Wendy, about moving forward. We want to partner with First Five because we shouldn't have to wait until we're adults to really be told that you're lacking emotional intelligence skills. That's too late, okay? And so we want to get ahead of it. And so we want to partner with First Five, and we want to see how we can influence early childhood. We want to partner with more. We're partnering already with you, but we want to deepen our relationship. So we can learn from you and you can influence what we're doing. And we want to do more partnerships with our Be Well department, our public health department, you know, our child support services department, because guess what, guys? The folks that you're working with, the school system that you influence, the boards that you sit on, Wendy, they'll be the future leaders.
Oh, yes, they will.
Until they're in college to be interacting with them. No, I want to do, you know, for HR to be doing, or the county to be doing more work with UCSB, the higher education partners. So I see an opportunity for there to be new ways of thinking.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm excited. You can tell it doesn't take much to get excited about things. I'm excited, and I really, it is for me, it is an honor to be part of this county and to be a leader in this county, and to know that there are things that I can affect. And from this platform, both all the platforms that I bring, most importantly, a mother and wife and sister and relative type of thing, and certainly on the school board, we're impacting young minds, how critical that is. And then in early care, I could be in a better position from 0 to adults, you know, in terms of that piece and how exciting. And I know that we have it within us, within this county, to move us forward. We got to deal with some racial issues. So I'm glad to be part of that. We need a racial and equity plan for this county. Let's be the model. Let's be the one that say, well, that's it. Instead of looking at national development to figure out how to do it, let us lead it. You know, there's many things that we do in Santa Barbara County. We like the, you know, tourist thing. Well, I want us to be, you know, the good thing about good citizen thing going on here. If you go to work there, you got it going on. We should have a waiting list to want to come to work here. You know, and so how do we do that? And
that way. So
you know, so I'm proud. I'm a proud county member, and I'm ready to let's put our feet to the fire and let's get with it and call each other up in both in terms of what our abilities to do. We've seen what we can do when we do it together. It needs to be part of our continuity plans that we're going to be revisiting this, and we're going to take on things, and we're not going to shy away from it. We're going to be open. We're going to be open to criticism.
Yes.
You know, let's not get defensive. Let's be open so that we can make it better, because then when we're hearing from the folks that's really being impacted, then that can make our policies that much better and stronger to support them. You're right. And so the next crisis that we're in, we already know. We know what we know what we're going to do, and they have the confidence, meaning the community. Every part of our community has the ability to say, the county has me, the city, whatever that has me, because they're thinking about me and they heard me. And they listened to me. And that's our most important job. We got to listen, and we got to figure out how best to do it. And the way to do it is we talk about our Renew 22. Whatever R's need to be in there, we need to add some in there, restart, replan, whatever. Let's just do it. And again, this can't be just this moment that we get excited about it and scurry and be reactive. That's not the R we want. You know, reactive in crisis. We got to react, but not reactive to a situation. It really has to be not just this moment, but it has to be a movement across, and it has to last a lifetime, irregardless of the leadership. We have to have a firm foundation in our folks, in humility, and how do we do it better each time, and use our data to really guide us and help us, and appreciate everything that everybody is doing, and let's meet each other where we are and be essential in how we go forward.
Awesome.
Right. That is awesome. So now we really need to wrap this up, right?
Oh, really? Oh, man. No, I love this.
And a lot has been said. And so we need to do like a quick summary. You know, a lot has been said. We talked about leadership. We talked about essentialism. We talked about what's going on in terms of racism. We talked about a host of things. We talked about what we need to do. We talked about the community. We talked about the first 5. We talked about when first 5 goes to college. Yes. Where do we land this puppy this morning? What is the final takeaway we want to leave with? What would you like to leave us with, Wendy, if in all of what we just said? Sum it up in one sentence.
I know that we can. I know that we must rise together and be together and end together. And for that, we're stronger. And every day we must think about each other and what we have to do.
Awesome. Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Cheers toast, my coffee mug.
Oh yeah, this is juice.
You know, I was thinking what we need to do is to have a COSB 360 podcast mug.
Yes, I'll have my coffee cup, girl. I'm all about that. I'll toast to the team like, y'all got your podcast going on. Yeah, so thank you guys so much for doing this. And I think, wow, I'm looking forward to hearing others. And I know Mona and Scott have done it, and now I get to be a part of it, and to be a part of something that is positive and uplifting and inspiring when we're here from each other, because we will get to know each other in a different way that we haven't, right? Because we don't have that time. So even this moment gives us time to be together in ways that we couldn't have been able to just because of restraints. But now we have to do it, and there's an opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Wendy.
You guys have demonstrated, you know, that's important. I think we've used the word before, but it's courage. It takes courage to be transparent. It takes courage to be vulnerable. It takes courage to lead, and it takes courage and wisdom to know what to apply at any given time. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll touch base soon.
We will. And Leonie, I'm gonna get a package for your baby, for your grandbaby.
Oh,
we'll get a package for you.
I'm still processing.
We have something for grandmothers too. We're gonna work with you. You know, even from the name, where you can be Nana, Neva, Diva. What we got you, girl. We got you.
Diva, girl. I'm a diva. Okay, well,
we got a different name for you then. For, you know, to show the divaness in the grandmother, right?
That's right.
I'm going to send you an article. I'm going to send you an article that just talked about this very thing. So I'll send it to you, and that'll be part of your grandma package. We'll send you a grandma cover package. So, and let's stay in touch about your daughter too. Your younger daughter.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. I appreciate that. Thanks, Wendy.
And let's link up if we need to link up on, on a Zoom. I'm happy to talk to her, let her know, hey girl, I'm thinking about you, know your mom. It's all good. It's that family thing that it's important. So let's connect.
Absolutely. I am, like I said, it's a mind shift and doing things differently.
Yeah.
I made that decision that I'm not going to sit in the vacuum of, whatever is swarming around me. I'm going to reach out. I'm brave enough to say, I need help.
Right. That's important.
And that's where I'm at now. I'm like, no, I'm not going to struggle with this. I need help. She's due in 2 months, and we, and all my family members, God bless them. They're like, my mom is like, yeah, I get to be a great grandmom. And, my sisters and everyone is swarming around her. And
that's so good.
Ex-husband is like, ooh, you're gonna be a grandma. And they're teasing me. So we're doing this differently.
Yes.
Differently. And so I appreciate. So you will be hearing from me. So thanks again, Wendy. Right. Thank you.
You're so welcome. You guys have a wonderful day, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the interview portion of our program. Up next, we will take a deeper dive into the topics covered and also provide some news and updates.
June
is where we go to the after show. Really enlightening, very transparent, heartfelt, even with you sharing about your daughters, and Wendy's, comments. Again, I felt just very heartfelt. So very heartfelt conversation. But one of the things that, you and I had discussed at the very beginning of this before we started was the idea of mindset, a mind shift, which you alluded to a couple of times. So as we're going into this segment, how does that play out? What do we want people to know about mind shift mindset when they're going through a crisis?
Yesterday, as you're aware, I had the high honor of teaching becoming a supervisor, facilitating one of the sessions yesterday morning, and I really enjoyed it. And initially, we had titled the session "Difficult Conversation," and I changed that, and I asked the learners to ride along with me, shifting the mindset from difficult to courageous.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because when we hear the word difficult, we feel like we have to now fight something. But courageous means I'm going to show confident. My intention will be one that, really exudes positivity. And the book that we just quickly looked at when we talk about mindset was the Mindset, the New Psychology of Success by Carol Dweck. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. And she talks about the growth mindset, right? You have a growth mindset, and you have the other mindset that is more of fixed mindset, right? The growth versus the fixed mindset. So I'm looking here on my phone, and the growth mindset says failure or crises is an opportunity to grow, right? Yeah, I'm going through this crisis, but what can I learn from this experience to help myself, as Wendy said, to call myself up? I'm going to call myself up, right? And then the fixed mindset says crisis is the limit of my abilities. I can't do this. I'm stuck. I don't have the resources, and look at the health crisis that's going on, and people are dying, and the civil rights. So we see all that's working against us, versus saying, okay, I acknowledge that these things are happening around me, but how can I take from this, right? And we talk about that in our Monday Morning Connect. How can we turn this change into an opportunity? Because it is a change that we're going through. Would you agree?
No, a transformation.
It is a transformation that we're going through. So it is definitely a transformation. In turn, and it's forcing us to examine, as you and I were talking this morning, to examine our belief system.
Correct.
I call it BS, right? Examine our belief system. So I wrote a couple of things down this morning regarding our belief system, because I think it has to do with self-leadership. You have to first change me before I can change us, and before we can really experience transformation. And so we have my number one tip to our listeners: one, look forward to the new normal, because it's going to look different. So look forward through the eyes of, probably look forward through new lenses, take the glasses off and clean it and look again, because it's going to be different. Mm-hmm. Number two, build an incredible and outstanding new belief system on what's important. So when they talk about essential, maybe we can even say what's essential, right?
Yeah, because that's what's important. The things that are essential are the most part, your top priorities, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And then think about any area of your life where you're not getting the results you want. So that's self-reflection. You have to sit long enough. And I always say, have a coming to Jesus moment conversation with yourself and say, in these areas, I'm doing okay, or I'm doing great. But in these particular areas, I really need to up my game, or there's some behavior, beliefs, or, things that I need to bless and release. They're no longer working for me, and they will not help me as I transition into the new normal.
And just so you know, we did yesterday, we also did the LCP book club. I did that today. And we had some of these conversations as well when we were looking at some of the chapters, John Maxwell, the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And the topic in terms of self-reflection, is important. That change and that leadership, it starts with you, as you mentioned.
Yes.
There was something though in chapter 6 was really a chapter that just really stood out to me, resonate with me, because you know how I feel about organization and culture. And it talks about the environment that you're in, what's environment conducive to your growth. And so, how do you make changes? Can you make change to yourself if the environment stays the same, and the environment may stay the same? And also, can you change the environment, but you stay the same? Or can you change yourself and change the environment? And he talked about which ones would which would really accelerate growth. And being able to make a change in yourself and a change in the environment is where you will get your biggest bang for the buck, so to speak. So for me, when I hear you speak about that, those are some of the things that come to my mind. And we were, like I said, we were having a discussion with the groups yesterday, just around some of those same principles. Yeah, because it begins with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really does. So thanks for sharing that. Recently, and you know the story. The team have heard the story of my daughter's new adventure. The 13-year-old, again, 13-year-old. I'm telling you, I'm gonna make a website called www.raisingthe13yearold.com. And so my daughter wanted a reptile, a lizard. Now, June, you and I are from the Caribbean. We lizards. They just don't. They live on the trees outside. And so my daughter actually helped me to shift my mindset. And she and I had the conversation, and I said, Mommy wants to learn. So I'm going to ask you to build a business case around why Jalen deserves to get this reptile. And she did, and she presented her case, and she was approved, to purchase the reptile with some caveats. One of the caveat, I said, you started this book like a year ago, but you've never really, put a lot into the book. And I think now that we have some time, might you consider completing the book, at least one of the books. One is actually a book around bravery because she has ADHD. And so she has had to learn how to navigate through, her diagnosis. And so June, I am watching my daughter with this lizard, and it's like a new experience for me. It's taking me out of my skin, but it's okay. I'll survive, okay? And so my daughter one day had a conversation with the lizard, and she said to the lizard, his name is Moo. And she said, Moo, Mama's gotta work. She said, Moo, being a single parent is hard, Moo, because now Mama's gotta work to get money so that I can buy food to feed you. It's just hard, Moo. And I'm sitting there going, like, what does she know about being a single parent and it being, difficult?
She's a lizard. What do you mean?
But back up. When she initially asked for the lizard, June, I couldn't understand going through COVID-19 why my daughter felt the need, why she wanted this thing. And then I was walking one day and it clicked. She's looking for connection. And she's also she's shifting her mindset because she was unable to play with her friends, right? Because of the social distancing. And she came up with a new way of maintaining that physical connection with a human being outside of her family. And I got it. And then in addition to that, June, what I learned through the process as we're going through, I said, you know what? I see the need that I really need to understand my children a little bit in a different way as they're getting older. And so I talked to them and we agreed that they would take the test, the 5 love languages. So they took the 5 love languages test, and then they took the values test. And the light bulbs just went off as we were having these conversations. So let's go back again to what I said earlier about the mindset and the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset that says everything is happening to me, right? The fix says everything that's going on is happening to me and life is just against me. Versus the growth mindset says, how can I maximize the use of some of the pieces and recreate a new story, a new experience for myself? And she taught me that. My daughter taught me that. So
we can learn things from our kids, huh? I said,
we do. We actually do. And the third tip would be for our listeners to try to be more open, adaptable, and flexible to what others are going through. Flexibility in our mindset or even in our interaction with others, right? So sometimes we have to bend this way to be able to help people. Sometimes we have to go down and pick them up and pull them up, remind them of who they are, right? So try to be more open adaptable, and more flexible. And the last piece I would say, which is so important, feed yourself with value added, and good knowledge. Protect this mind, what comes into your mind through media, right? What we read, what we hear, and what we watch. Be very mindful, pay attention, make sure it's essential, and make sure that it will help you to grow and not keep you stuck to where you are. So those are the few tips that I wanted to offer around mindset. So I wanted you to also share with our listeners about the ebook club and how what role does mindset play into why we're doing that.
I'm going to do that real quick so we can, because I'm looking at the time here. And so one of the things I want to talk to everyone about and just promote is the ebook club that's going to support this podcast. And so the next session, we already have people who are actually registered to participate in this. It's going to be about the outward mindset. And this book was written by the Arbinger Institute. They've written some great books, and I've read 2 of them already. Leadership and Self-Deception is also a great book to read. But this really, and in addition to the book, those who are interested in participating in this book club, Deanna is actually sending out a study guide, because they have a study guide that goes with it to support the book as well. So we're going to be going through the book because it is important in terms of how you look at life, your system, your values. You know, one of the things that you talked about, you know, how your daughter impacted you. And as you're talking about the lizard, you know, I remember, and we talk about belief systems, and again, going back to the book in terms of mindset. I remember when I must have been real little. I was real little because I was still back in JA, and I was with my cousins, and we were playing out in the dirt, right? And so you may remember, the audience won't know what I'm talking about, but you remember this little thing we had a bulla kick, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I don't know how to explain it to you guys. I don't even know how to explain that.
It's like a bun, a sweet bun.
Yeah, you know, but it's hard, right? You know, it's not soft. So anyhow, that was one of my favorite things, you know, put some butter on it and good. And as a kid, I thought that I could make my own bulla cake from the dirt. So of course, as a little kid, you know, we're pouring some water and packing it up and trying to make bulla cake. So that's the mind of a child, you know. That's what I thought at that time. But you grow up and realize, no, you don't get bulla from dirt, you know. So when you talk about the belief system, is what do we believe? We have to go back and we have to examine not only what we believe, but why we believe it. And so this in itself is about, again, growth and development. That's going to impact me first, and then impact the people that I love, and then impact my work and also my community. And I think that's why this is so important. And I think everything that we're doing here is really, on this platform, designed to impact you as an individual, but also impact our county, influence our county, and also impact our community. So it all goes out, because that's what service is about. Service is about serving others, and that's what we're here for. So thanks, Leonie, and thanks everyone for tuning in, you know, into the podcast. If you have any questions regarding comments or anything that was mentioned today, you can reach out to Leonie or myself. Look forward to our next session that we're going to be having. We will send out a teaser to tell you who the next person is going to be, but we're stay tuned. And we're also, the other thing that I want to remind you, we're also going to bring on just employees who are doing great things across the county. This is not just a leadership platform. Yes. By any means. Yes. There's a couple of employees that are doing some really great things that I think we want to promote. As a matter of fact, I know. So stay tuned for that as well. All right. Thanks, Leonie, for everything, and thank you for sharing your heart, you know, and what's going on with you, and how that helps also to just navigate this environment. So thank you so much for doing that as well. All right.
Wonderful. Thanks, Joan, and bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the COSB 360 Conversations podcast, the platform for county influencers. We welcome your thoughts and feedback. So if you have any questions for today's guest, or if you have any recommendation for future topics and guests, please contact our co-host. We consider all county employees to be influencers. So if you're working on an initiative or a program that has a positive impact in our county, please contact us with your idea.